Hey everybody, it's Away Games. It's the Away Games podcast, and the baseball season is donezo. It is over. I'm Kevin McCaffrey. There's Adam Mamawala. How are you, Adam?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fine. I think I got my face sunburned. I was golfing in 38-degree weather
Oh, wow.
today. I didn't eat food until nearly 4 p.m. I did have an IPA that counts, sort of.
Nice.
And yeah, but yeah, that's been that's been my day so far. Post World Series, I watched the World Series finish on a tube TV. At like an old school, I hadn't seen one of these in a while, at the Gutter Bar, where there's a comedy show that you and I have done.
Yeah, great
Um,
comedy show. And also, fun fact, it was the site of the small Ebola breakout in New York years ago. Do you know that?
no, what year was this?
It was within the past 10 years. There was like an Ebola scare. And it was some like a Doctors Without Borders sort of person who had come back and then went bowling at the Gutter in Brooklyn.
That's pretty funny. Well, great place. Check it out. But that's where I watched it.
I don't think they put that on their website. Like, hey, come to the
Yeah,
Gutter. It's where
great.
Ebola might have happened.
Yeah, Ebola strike against a communicable disease. Yeah, yesterday.
Ebola strike?
Ebola strike. There we go. Whenever there's a little wordplay to be had, I feel like you get there
Oh, yeah.
pretty quick.
Get me
Uh,
on the At Midnight writing staff. They'll never
get
read my
them.
packet.
Yes, and at Away Games pod, if you want to check us and what we're saying about things over on Twitter and such. Yeah, man, the World Series is over. The Rangers won their first World Series title.
They sure
What
did.
what are the big feelings and takeaways for you after this World Series?
I think my big feelings and takeaways as a Cubs fan are that it is possible to break a streak without making all of your fans almost die.
Yeah,
That's a nice thing because the Red Sox did that too. Like obviously the Yankee series was stressful, but then when
right.
they finally got there, they just swept the Cardinals, right? And similarly, the Rangers kind of games 1 and 2 were very close, and we should talk about those. But like the last 3 games were just a complete steamrolling. I know Game 5 like was a lot closer than the score would indicate, getting no hit for 6 innings and then
Right.
having kind of an offensive outburst at the end. But I mean, I do think Texas was the better team.
I think undoubtedly Texas is the better team, but they actually they seem like the better team throughout the year. They seem that way run differential wise. They seem that way in terms of the actual baseball wins they piled up. All that.
Right.
Adam, you know? Here's a little fun fact for people that I found out from my friend Brock Mahan. But if the Diamondbacks had won, they would have
Mhm.
been the second worst team to win a World Series by run differential. And I had a guess for what the worst team
Mhm.
would have been. What would your guess be?
My guess would have been the 83 and 81 2006 St. Louis Cardinals.
That is exactly what I thought. And it wasn't. It was from the four playoff team total era, which is bizarre. It was
Hmm.
the 1987 Minnesota Twins, were somehow a negative 20 run differential and won the American League West, I guess, that year somehow, when there was only East and West. I don't know how that happened, but that's
They
a little
must
bit.
have pretty much won a bunch of close games, and then every time they lost, just got slammed.
Yeah, exactly. So
Huh.
it's bizarre, but that didn't happen. They didn't win because they're not as good. So they lost the series
Right.
in 5 games. And yeah, the first well, I guess we can talk about how we felt watching the last game before
Mhm.
we do a quick summary of what happened before it. But the last game and watching the Rangers win, how you feel about that? I mean, I guess were we both generally loosely rooting for the Rangers?
I was, yeah. I mean, I think if the Rangers had won, generally speaking, if I don't actively hate one of the teams involved,
Yeah.
I tend to root for the team who either hasn't won recently or hasn't won at all, which in this case was the Rangers. In the same way that, like, I definitely would have been rooting for Cleveland and will root for Cleveland when they're not playing the Cubs at some point in the future.
Yeah, and the Rangers were the team that's been around the longest without ever winning. I think it was
Right.
1961 established.
Does
Also,
that
as
mean
you,
now the Brewers are? Because that's fun.
I think it's the Brewers and Padres tied for next.
Oh,
I
right,
think,
right,
and then
yeah.
maybe the Mariners right after that. But I think it's the Brewers and Padres. Both were, I want to say, 69. Nice. As you said, but making a team that can sort of not almost kill you with stress while they win. We are recording this on the anniversary of the most stressful game
Hmm.
of all time. This is November
Yep.
2nd as we record this.
What a great day.
Yeah.
I mean,
ultimately.
Yeah, ultimately the best, but getting there, some of the most, yeah, emotions that I think I can say honestly, I've never felt that exact emotion before.
Hmm.
Is that possible?
It is
Like to feel
because,
it that strongly because it's such a unique thing.
yeah, because it's the most intense emotion you can feel about something that ultimately, like, I don't want to say doesn't matter, but it's not your parent in the hospital. It's
Right.
not it's not like a, a major breakup or having a child.
Hmm.
Outside of like these things, it's like the thing that matters most in the category underneath the most important things,
Right. 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 Right.
So it's weird that we, that yes, that we had that. And yeah,
It's funny you say that because Jonah Heim was the first person they interviewed after the game ended last night, and he did a really good job because it was one of those like when you give an Oscar speech but forget to thank your wife sort of things where like
yeah.
he very quickly they were like, you caught the final out of the Texas Rangers first World Series. How did it feel? He was like, unbelievable, best moment of my life. Other than having kids and getting married, like he caught himself and like threw it in there. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and you should be able to do that. I mean, people should be able to get that where when you're saying this, it's the best of the next category,
Yeah.
and so good for them. I was rooting for them to win it at home. I always prefer when a team,
Right.
especially winning the first time, wins it at home. And like that has sort of not happened lately, right? Because obviously our team won it on the road. The Red Sox, I want to say, also won it on the road, right?
That sounds well.
I
So
think.
let's backtrack here, right? So last year the Astros won at home,
Right.
didn't they? Was that game six?
But
Or no, that was
they'd already won, so I'm like
yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
recent times, I'm sort of not counting that.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I agree that it would have been really cool for Texas to have won at home. I also, even though it's not my team, ever since 2003, I have disavowed myself of the ability to root for that because I still have this weird guilt about the fact that when the Cubs were losing to the Marlins in Game 5, there was this part of my brain that was like, it'll be more fun to win in Chicago. And I wish I had never even thought that. Not that I had anything to do with it,
No,
but
but
I just wish I hadn't thought it.
I totally understand the feeling because then you're like you're getting picky in a way where it turns out no, fully no
Right.
soup for you. Like
Yeah.
you don't get it at all. I remember because when that happened, I'm fairly certain that Carlos Zambrano was taking the mound for Game 5
Hmm.
of the NLCS because I surprised my now wife Jamie on her 1 year anniversary of dating, which is October 12th.
Hmm.
And I was out here and she was interning at Letterman and I surprised her and I was like, I'm missing Game 5 for this. And the Cubs lost and I was like, it's fine. Who cares? And it was a little
Yeah.
bit of the same thing where, oh, I should have been holding that peril
Hmm.
more closely to me the whole time, I guess.
Do you think she appreciated what a sacrifice that was at the time?
She did. She fully did. And then I was back in Muncie, Indiana. I went to Ball State, and we were on the phone while the Game 6 breakdown started to happen. And
Oh
it
no.
was at the time where we had free minutes as of 9 p.m. So that's when we would do our calls while she was interning. And I was like, I have to go, and she's like, I get it. Bye. So yeah,
Oof.
she got it.
Wow.
Um, yeah.
But yeah, I guess back to the original point. I'm happy to see the Rangers winning, and I think to kind of back up to how the series all began. Um, the Diamondbacks are about to win Game 1, and then Seawald gives up that home run to eventual World Series MVP Corey Seager, and I gotta say, how they had that stat where it's like, with one swing of the bat, the winning percentage went from 10% to 90%.
Hmm.
There's no way to really quantify this, but just emotionally, it's almost like the Kirk Gibson home run off of Eckersley. Like when there's a swing in a Game 1 in a World Series or an NBA Finals or whatever, you just feel like it has such an outsized impact on the result of it. Like the other best example I could give of that is that excruciating Rockets Magic series where Nick Anderson missed those 4 straight free throws. That was Game
Yeah.
1. The Magic were about to win that game, and they were a young team and they were a very good team. And it was like after that they just folded, which the Diamondbacks didn't do. Like they came back and impressively won in Game 2. But
Yeah. Blew him
I
out in
do
Game 2,
think,
9-1.
yeah, I do think though that ultimately that Seager home run in Game 1 is like the moment of the series probably for me.
Well, I think the Kirk Gibson comparison is a very good one there. I mean,
Yeah.
down to a left-handed hitter in the
Right.
bottom of the ninth.
Yeah.
Obviously
And
didn't.
Seawald is no Eckersley, of course, but
No, but Seawald's really good. He had a tough time in a couple of games this series. Obviously, in the first game, in game one there, and then last night gave up the homer to Semien as well. That
yeah.
sort of gave them the insurance runs there. But then also after that, it was followed by after the Seager tie, it was followed by the Adolis Garcia, who had a hell of a playoff run
Yeah.
himself. His walk off opposite field
hmm
shot.
Yeah. That guy is ripped.
He's really ripped. He's very fun. He's a very fun player. It's too bad.
Yeah.
It's too bad he hurt his oblique and he couldn't continue playing.
Yeah.
But I mean, so I think for the Rangers, good for them that they, they were sort of physically falling apart at the end
hmm
there. It seemed, and not just him.
Well, and that's also part of the reason that I was happy that they won Game 5 was that you figured the longer the series went on, it was almost a little bit like the reverse of what happened with the Cubs in 2016, which is that like because of the Cubs getting to Game 6, the pendulum continued to swing in their favor because of how gassed certain guys were for Cleveland. It's kind of the like Kevin Millar, like, hey, don't let us win Game 4 sort of thing, where it's like now we can like line it up in a certain way where the Rangers were going to have to win without Scherzer, who arguably wasn't great, but still without Scherzer, without Garcia, who other than Seager was certainly like the guy in the playoffs, and I
Yeah.
think I don't think they get there without him and what he did in the Houston series. So, um, yeah, I'm glad that they were able to take care of it last night, and also selfishly, like I probably wasn't going to be able to watch as much of the games as I would have liked to this coming weekend. So I'm happy with it,
So nice to wrap
with
it
it
up.
being done.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, for sure.
game one was kind of an all-time classic. Game two is a blowout. Game three was 3-1 Rangers. Then there was game four, that 11-7 game, which wasn't actually that close. It
Right.
was a runaway with the Rangers. The Diamondbacks came back a little bit at the end on Halloween, and then last night, like you said, it seemed like, okay, is Zach Allen just going to throw a no-hitter on this thing? And then
Right.
once that unraveled, it was over. So
Yeah. But I think my big impressions and big takeaways, and I would think that most Cubs fans feel this way too, and heading into an offseason that we hope will be a big one, is like the first image that you see after they win the World Series is Seager and Semien running up to each other and hugging each other, a la, KB and Rizzo and Russell and Baez. And like 2 years ago, they lost 100 games and they signed two big free agents. And it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes you can sign everybody and still lose. You can still be the Dodgers and get knocked out in 3 games. But like, I hope that this is an indication to the Cubs and to people in baseball that like you are allowed to buy talent and you
yeah,
can win that way, and it's arguably the fastest way to winning. So it also like I don't know how you feel, but in seeing the run the Diamondbacks had, I think it was easy to be like, well, the Cubs were right there, and that could have been them, and I just don't think it could have been
no,
this year's Cubs. I really do not.
I don't either. And the first reason I don't is because it wasn't. Is because
Sure.
it
Yeah.
actively wasn't, and they if it was going to be, it would have been, because
You're pulling the old if you were the inventors of Facebook, you'd have invented Facebook.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I because they had that right in front of them, head to head with the Diamondbacks too. Went what, 1-6, I want to say, 1-5,
1-6.
1-6.
Yep.
Yeah, so no, it wasn't them, because they had it and they didn't. And yeah, so I don't feel like this is a big case of like, god dang, we were right there, because
Right.
we weren't. But I think your point of looking at the Rangers who signed Semien and Seager, two of the top,
Mhm.
couple free agents that were on the board that
Yeah.
year. After that, signed John Gray. They also signed Jacob deGrom, the best pitcher in the world when he pitches, who didn't pitch, and
Yeah.
it still worked. That's what the money is for. Extreme
Mhm.
Don Draper voice. It is
Yeah.
like,
It's
this
I
is-
mean the Braves won without Acuna.
yeah, exactly. That is the benefit, that as a larger market team. And by the way, the Cubs are a larger market team than the Texas Rangers. Dallas has a lot of money. The Rangers organization has a lot of money. They had a war criminal that owned them for a while and was in the stadium the other day, and we have would-be war criminals, I'm sure, owning our team. There's a lot of similarities between them, but we've got at least the money. Also, the Rangers supplemented that spending with a good farm system, right? With Jonah Heim's kind of a late bloomer, but Jung at third is a very good player. You know, they've got
Yeah.
and then Lau was at first that was a guy that they found you know, was also kind of a mid-late bloomer. But this is the Cubs have more money and they have a better farm system now. So I think the Rangers are
Right.
good. There's no reason the Cubs shouldn't be the rich man's this year's Rangers
Hmm.
next year.
Right.
Do I think that's going to happen? Not necessarily, but like there is no that is a pretty good comparison.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, and I do actually think that this will be a good offseason for the Cubs because I think that it kind of has to be like
Yeah, I do too.
there's so much pressure on Hoyer, there's so much pressure on Ross, and obviously Ross can't control the roster moves, but yeah, I think the slogan of this year's Cubs team was you're not that guy, pal.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one of the more accurate and less inspiring Cubs hashtags. I guess they would
Yeah.
be going with.
But 2024 Cubs, who do you think you are? I am.
Get the bowler out again. Bowling theme. Yeah. Also, the other notes I guess I had from this series, just Corey Seager, World Series MVP. I think he was the first World Series MVP, first to win World Series MVP in both leagues because he was the
Yes.
World Series MVP for the Dodgers in 2020. And Bochy becomes, I think, the third manager to win the World Series in both
It's
leagues.
impressive. The other one that I saw that was really cool, Will Smith became the first player to win 3 consecutive World Series with 3 different teams.
Oh,
'Cause he was
weird.
on the Astros last year and the Braves the previous year.
He
And I
topped
forgot about him being on the Astros.
I did too. And he tops the our guy Ben Zobrist, who was two years back to back with the
Right.
Royals and the Cubs, 15-16.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like how our boy Steve Kerr, he played on the Spurs that following year after the three-peat, so he got to win 4 in a row.
yeah, and sort of a I guess non-consecutive version. If we're doing NBA comps, Robert Ory, where just wherever Robert Ory went for a while,
Right.
they just like won the championship wherever he was. You know,
Big shot Rob.
big job, Rob, baby. Yeah, but I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like we've talked in previous episodes about the consternation over does these two teams, specifically the Diamondbacks being in the World Series, does that mean things should change? And like we've talked about it. I kind of like in this moment I don't care. Like I think
Yeah.
the playoffs should be smaller, but I thought, this is a World Series. It wasn't an embarrassment, like the World Series was
Well,
fine.
I just think that there's something like uniquely American about the idea of, the whole underdog story thing because everyone talks so much about the baseball playoffs, but like, is anyone saying to themselves like, you know what, there's too many, we shouldn't have 64 teams in March Madness. What's the point of that? Why don't we just have the 2 best teams from, like the college football? Like, why don't we just have the 4 best teams as decided by the the panel of wise elders?
The
No,
wise elder panel, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah, but I thought ultimately decent World Series, fine
yeah, it was
finish to
fine.
this fine finish to this year. And I think we'd have to look at, next week we're going to do our Cubs season review, and I guess we can peek in on some of the predictions we made overall for baseball. But I don't know if I don't think I predicted either of these teams would make the playoffs. Like I don't. There's maybe
I'd have
one of
to
us
look.
predicted the Rangers, but I think I had the Diamondbacks third in the West and not making.
I definitely
the
didn't have
playoffs.
the Diamondbacks, that's
Yeah.
for sure. I think I might have had the Mets winning the World Series. I might have. It's
Yeah.
possible I had like Mets Rangers or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if I had
mean,
Rangers, I would feel good about that.
oh, you'd have to. You should have put money on it, but yeah, man, that's it. That's the World Series. I don't know what other any other talking
I
points.
think the one negative for me about the Rangers having won is that I have been tentatively planning to go to that ballpark next year, and it's the opening weekend that the Cubs play there, which is
Oh,
now going to
wow.
be so much more expensive.
Yes. Oh, I didn't realize that. That's a weird.
Yeah,
That's a weird open. But maybe
it is a weird open. Yeah,
Yeah.
but weirdly, the Cubs did open there less than 10 years ago in the old stadium.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
why they've opened at Texas a couple times.
That is strange. I mean, I guess Texas is one where And even now, I mean, I guess they can do the indoors now, but I guess that's one where you're like, all right, April, Texas can have home games in April.
Right.
It's
It's probably
warmer
one
and
of the few
stuff.
times they have the roof open, I would assume.
Yeah, that's true. Um, cool. Well, that'll be fun. Maybe you'll get to see a banner raised. How about that?
I might, or I might just say this is too expensive. I'm going to go to the second game.
Yeah, that would also make sense. Um,
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else storyline wise. I mean, I think the LCSs were really fun. I feel
yeah,
like
two seven gamers.
yeah, they were. And first of all, amazing that the ALCS was a series in which the road team won every game. That was one of those things where when that happened in 2019, I was like, I don't know if we're going to see that again. And then, of course, it happened. It's very hard to imagine a scenario where the road team wins every game for an entire playoff run again. Like 11-0 is crazy.
It's bananas. Yeah, no, I mean like that is, I mean because that is literally as many road games as you can win, right? Or well, I guess if
I,
you
I guess
no,
they
because
could have played an extra one in that first, since it would have been like all three on the road, as it were.
yes. Okay. So I guess if you're like the thing is you'd have to be the lower seed to hit the
Right.
maximum
But
away
it's
games.
close. I mean,
Yeah.
it's they played the maximum amount of games in the LCS, and then I guess no, I'm forgetting who did they. Oh, they beat the Orioles, and they only played one
Hmm.
home game in that, or two road games in that one. So
Right.
yeah, it's like I think two shy of what would be the most, which would be
Yeah.
13. But
But it still feels like a mark that can probably like yeah, we probably won't see a team do that ever
it just seems
again.
like statistically almost impossible. Besides the fact that the crowds are what they are
Hmm.
for road games in the playoffs, but I think it speaks to how I don't know, I guess resilient the Rangers are, and also how good they were at getting leads early, which is the number
Hmm.
one way to shut up a road crowd.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, it was a great road team. And then I guess just the Bruce Bochy thing for me, it's a thing where we were talking to or I was exchanging threads with with our friend Tom Dog, Tom Lewis,
Mm.
who big baseball fan, and he said his kids met Bochy years ago, and that he's
Oh, cool.
one of the nicest guys, and has believed the hype when it comes to how huge his head is physically, gigantic head on that man,
Oh,
famous for a huge hat size, and he, but like I don't know fully how to measure a manager's contributions, but three times with the Giants when I'm not
hmm
sure they were ever the best team
they were not.
in all of baseball, right? For those three. And then this is his first year with the Rangers. It's just too much of a coincidence to not mean anything. I feel
Right.
like, when you do it four times with that mix of teams, it's just shout out to Bruce Bochy for really putting he was a Hall of Famer anyway, but really putting sort of like a jewel on top of that crown.
Yeah, and I mean, he when they asked him about it last night, he was like, "Yeah, I was sitting in my recliner and I got the call from Chris Young with this job offer." So it's not like he needed to do it. Also, that is the same Chris Young that got in a fight with Derek Lee, right? Like
Yeah,
tall pitcher
the big
Chris
guy.
Young. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I guess it's water under the bridge now, Team D Lee. But yeah, it's funny I mean, it is funny to be old enough where it's like the guys we saw getting in fights are now wearing suits and making
Right.
actual
Yeah.
baseball decisions. But yeah,
But yeah, the Rangers are set up for a pretty bright future, especially like if there's any situation in which DeGrom comes back and actually pitches healthily. Do you know Evaldi's contract status?
I can look it up, but I think he was signed for a few years
Yeah,
because
I feel like most people they have for a decent while.
yeah, Evaldi signed a 2-year, 34 million contract with the Rangers.
It's a good deal, man.
It
That is a
is
good deal.
it's a no downside deal. 17 million for a pitcher of that guy's caliber. I mean, he's had some health trouble, but yeah, in 2024 he'll earn base salary of 16, while
Yeah.
in total of 17 with bonuses and stuff. So yeah, he's got another year over there.
It was funny. They were talking. I forget who said this. Someone on the Rangers. And they asked him about like, oh, what'd you think of Evaldi? And he was like, oh, he's a gamer. He's so tough out there. And he's like, you know what? He's a great guy, but an even greater pitcher. And that's fine, but it was just funny because like that's the opposite of how you usually hear people say that.
Yeah, because it implies you're like
He can't possibly be as good of a person as he is a baseball player.
yeah, it does because it's a big compliment to his pitching abilities, but it is like personally he has room to grow. I could name some flaws. He's not a 10 of a guy. He's good, you know.
It was funny. I think he just said it backwards because usually it's like, oh, he's a great pitcher, but he's an even better guy.
Yeah.
But I think he was just like flustered and said it backwards, which I was amused.
Oh, that's very funny, and there's so many people, colleagues of ours in our industry of comedy, where you would do exactly that, but on purpose.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, he's a fine guy. He's an even better comedian, you know, by quite a bit. Actually, you know, there's both, but yeah,
by a mile.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, shout out to our pal Jason Salmon, who finally got his ring.
Yeah, good for him.
Big Rangers fan. I don't really know any other Rangers fans, honestly. So he was my guy that I was like texting during this.
Yeah. Yeah, good for them. Also, I just posted on at Away Games Pod on Twitter. I posted myself briefly defending Diamondbacks fans on that Amazon Prime Game Breakers show that you and I both did. I posted a little clip over there defending Diamondbacks fans. They were playing a smash or pass game where it's like basically, do you agree or disagree? And the statement was because like in the NLCS, tickets were going super cheap in Arizona. Some reporter couldn't find an Arizona fan in Philly. The question was, are the Diamondbacks the worst fans in sports? And I was like, well, no.
The Marlins exist.
That's literally the first thing I said verbatim. was the Marlins? I mean, no, the Marlins exist, and some other stuff. But yeah.
Also, in defense of Diamondbacks fans, if the Cubs had played the Phillies in the wild card round or whenever it would have been, I probably would have tried to go. I don't know that I would have worn Cubs stuff. That it is not a fun environment to be in an opposing team's stuff.
No.
I've been to enough games in Philly.
Yeah, and it's same with like just regular seasons Mets games. I've gotten into fights with adults, you know, that I didn't start, you know. No, so and also to credit Diamondbacks fans who none of them listen to this, I'm sure, but and there frankly aren't that many of them, but there's some, and I know they do. The ones that care. And it was pretty embarrassing that they had security guarding their pool last night so the Rangers wouldn't jump in it afterwards. Like, it's fucking sacred. This isn't the Vatican. Calm down.
So their fans can do a cannonball whenever they want, but the Rangers want to jump in, and it's a big no.
Yes, exactly. But I will say in the game that they were getting blown out that ended up 11-7, the fans were in it the whole time. They were like about
Totally agree with that. Yeah,
you know?
even in the games where they were getting blown out, like even a seeing eye single, people would be going nuts for. So
right.
Credit to them for that. And I don't have any particular feelings about D-backs fans one way or the other. And also, like, there is something to be said for the fact that they just haven't been around as long.
Yeah. Yeah, they're 25 years old, you know.
Right.
They're whatever, you know, they're in there.
Yeah. What were we doing when we were 25? Come on.
Making a lot of mistakes. They're blacking out every other night right now, the Diamondbacks. They're figuring out their lives. They don't even know what a calorie is yet. They don't know nutrition.
They just had to stop paying the extra insurance when they rent a car. I mean,
oh god, yeah. there's a lot going on for them. They gotta get off their parents' health insurance. The Diamondbacks are going through a lot right now.
That's tough, but
yeah. All right.
Credit to the Diamondbacks; they definitely earned it, and I do think that a Phillies Rangers World Series would have been a lot closer and possibly more fun. Because there was also like a real lack of former Cubs in this World Series, which is nice to have somebody to root for. But all that to say, that's the World Series recap. Happy 7-year anniversary of the Cubs doing something that let's hope they repeat it. Before we get to 10, let's not even get to a 10-year anniversary, huh?
It'd be nice. Once every 10 years from here on out. That's not too. Shouldn't be too much to ask.
No, I think that's reasonable. But we'll be back next week with a Cubs kind of season in review / what do we want to happen in the offseason, and you can come back for that.
Come back, folks. Hope you enjoyed the World Series. Happy end of the baseball season. We'll wrap it all up Cubs-wise next week. Thanks, everybody.